making Shabbat happen in so many people's houses. Thank you, Cantor. And thank you, Michael, as well. Oh my gosh. This week we read about, or we hear about so many people dying, over 50,000 Americans. So many more people now know someone who died. And almost everyone knows someone who's sick and really scared, that they're more scared than they've ever been. You know, this week's Torah portion, it's Tazria Metzora. It talks about leprosy. And it's sort of the Torah portion that every bar mitzvah kid does not want to have. And rabbis say, why should I talk about leprosy? But it's so relevant right now. It talks about, in days when no one knew about germs and they just thought that people who got diseases had evil spirits in them, because they saw if you hung out with someone who was diseased, you could get sick also. And so not only were people sick from the illness, but they were ostracized. They were kicked out. No one wanted to be with them. And they said, oh, they're being punished from God. So why they must have done something bad. Not only are they hurting, but they must be bad people in the community. Shun them. Well, this week's Torah portion says, really, that's not the way you should view people. And it tries to heal them. And they're welcomed in to be visited by the priest, by the high priest, who would perform very intimate rituals of cleansing using, a hyssop, which is an herb, which actually physicians have found on the underside of the leaf is a mild, like a penicillin. It's an antibiotic that really, it might have helped. I mean, it really might have helped with the illness. It's one thing to have an illness. It's another thing to be shunned. And our tradition teaches us very, very clearly this week, these people are not to be shunned. They can be really good and decent people. And the two Haftarah stories, because there's two of them, they're so good. I'm going to talk about one tonight and one tomorrow morning. They talk about people with leprosy and how to view them. And I'll go into a little bit more depth in a little bit. But there are so many people who are hurting right now. So many people with an illness and so many people who feel, not just a sickness of the body, but they have a sickness of the soul. They feel so isolated. They feel so lonely. They're full of so much fear. They don't know where to, what to do. They can't touch, you can't go, you can't do. I mean, I know of some people that they're just so scared. They're doing things that aren't even all that helpful, like waiting a week before wiping off their mail to look at. Well, you don't need to do it that, but they're just so scared. That's what they're doing. Just so scared. We pray for them all, for a complete healing of body and a complete healing of soul. I do a prayer of healing every one of the 5 at 5s, like on a daily. And I only list the names of those who are sent in that day. Otherwise, it would take up all 5 minutes. But today we're going to list a few names. And if there's any other names that you want included, if you're on Zoom, you can unmute yourself when I'm done. There'll be a moment where you can add those names. Or if you're on Facebook, you can like chat it in or something like that. But more importantly, hold them in your heart. So we pray for Bill Elkes and Hugh Lowenstein, Len Cohen, Alyssa, Asya Bat Alana, Igor Ben Rea, Elena Bat Zena, Joyce Simches, Dean Buckley, Kelly McAlpin, Kate Kuo, Al Gordon, Jose Portugal, Ruven Sesti, Roger Sesti, Rick and Betsy Levin, Darcy Rudnick, Abe Schoenwetter, Labe, Gavin, Sophia bat Cindy, Tal Tzion ben Mendelea, Samantha Carlton, Golda Sora bat Merkamasha, Menachia bat Menucha, Elchanan David, Scott Flanagan, Sandy Warner, John and Sandra Jones, Barbara Cohen, Miriam Yehudis, Bat Avram Valea, Dee Sorodiuk, Emma Klick, Yitzchak Leib Ben Note, Chanoch Ben Pesach Shalom, Sharon, Sivya Chava, Bat Chaim V'Pesach Kittel, Barry Bernstein, Larry Bodian, Matthew Zinn, Elizabeth Cooper, Carol Manasevich, Jim Schifrin, Yocheved Aviva, Bat Rafola Cohen, Lois Wasserman, Sal Marino, and Charles Lastman. So if you want to unmute, and you can right now.
Lionel Jackowitz.
Bruce Spiewak.
Cantor, you're going to lead us in some singing. And tonight, why don't we all stay mic'd? Oh, Leland, you have a name too?
My brother, Robert Shook.
So Cantor, we're going to all mute while you sing the Misha Berach.
I do Donald Finn.
Avinu Malkeinu shlach refuah shlema l'cholei amecha, cholei b'nei adam b'chava, v'gam l'kol b'levavenu, refuat haguf, refuat haguf. Shlach refuah shlema l'cholei.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת שבת וינפש, שבת שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. אותי לעולם. Modim אנחנו לך, מודים אנחנו לך. We thank you, God, for all your gifts. Modim אנחנו לך. We thank you, God, for all your gifts. Adonai, Zuri, Adonai, Zuri, Begoli. Ose shalom, imromav. Ose shalom, imromav. Ose shalom, imromav. Ose shalom, imromav. Yase shalom, Aleluya, Kol Yisrael. Amen. Ose shalom Roma, Yase shalom Aleluya. Ose shalom Roma, Yase shalom. Ose shalom Roma, Yase. Yase shalom Aleluya, Kol Yisrael. Amen. Amen.
So it's a simple story. It's found in the book of Second Kings. It's well, this is a double Torah portion, so there's two haftarahs. It's Tazria and Mitzor. This is the one from Tazria. It's a simple story about a guy who has leprosy, and he hears that the man of God in Jerusalem can heal him, and he goes into the Jordan River 7 times, and he's cured of his leprosy. Simple story, but wait. You think that that's a miracle, right? He has a disease, he goes in the water, he's cured of the disease. But the way that the story is told, there's a lot of different people, and all of them do seemingly very simple things, easy things to do. But my gosh, it's so hard for us to do them. That the miracle in the story maybe isn't that he gets healed. Maybe the miracle is all of the things that the different people do in the story. So the guy that's got leprosy is actually held up to be a very decent guy. His name is Naaman, and he's not Jewish. I mean, he's told that God favors him and favors his country because he's such a decent guy. And not only that, he comes from a country called Aram, which is modern-day Syria. And he's not just an anybody from Aram. He's the head general. And he's not just any old general. He's the general that in a war between Aram, which was Syria, and Israel in ancient times, he was the one that led it. And he was successful. I mean, he was successful. God was with him. We had messed up some. And on one of his conquests, he took a young lady back to be a slave. And she was a Jewish young lady, and she worked for him in his house. So the story gets kind of interesting because you would think that she would be angry to be taken away, that she might try to sabotage something in the house of this her captor, the general of the Syrian army. But apparently he was a decent guy and his wife was decent, and they treated this Hebrew servant pretty well. And she saw how pained this general was because of this leprosy. And she told the woman of the house, she said, you know, I really wish you would get better. There's this guy back in Israel. His name is Elisha, and he's a man of God, and he can cure your husband. Now, you would think that, of course we want to wish anyone well. And you hope they get better. You know, they say, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Well, this was an enemy of Israel. But she saw him not just as an enemy, she saw him as a person who was hurting. And she wished him well. And she said, there's this guy that can heal you. Now, I happen to love some of my favorite short stories of the Bible. There's 5 of my total favorites. They all involve Elisha. 5 that this is one of those great stories. So the wife tells the husband, the general, and the general could have said, oh, this is some plot to do me in. It's a trap. There's something that why would you want to wish me well? But he doesn't. He takes her good wishes at face value. And he says, I trust her. Must be doing the right thing. And he goes to his king, the general goes to the king, and the king says, when he hears the news, he says, look, if you want to do it, that's fine with me. I will send a note and I'll give you a whole mess of money because you are really important to our country and your health is really important. And he believes. He believes that there's something there that's not a trap. He has faith. And so he sends his general with some of the really an amount of wealth which is incredible, the silver and the gold and all kinds of raiments of cloth, and cloth was very, very expensive in the ancient world. And this note, and Naaman the general goes to Jerusalem, and the note goes to the king, and the king sees the general coming. And what would you do if the enemy's general is coming to visit the king? What would you think about that? And then he gets the note, and the note says, "We hear that that if he comes here, Naaman can be healed, and it's important that it be healed. And we have we'd like to give you all these gifts because we really want him healed." Now, the king of Israel, I mean, how would you respond to it? He doesn't respond, "Oh my gosh, this is a trap." He views it at face value. He looks at the people, not just the situation. The simple statement of a person who's hurting and is asking for help. That's really very powerful. First of all, to just ask for help, or to ask for help from someone that you've had bad relations with, but you're just asking for help for a genuine reason, not to try to hurt them or anything else. And I think the king realized that. But the king got very, very scared, because the king said, "Who am I, God, that I can determine who gets healthy and who doesn't? I can't do that." And the king started repenting and tearing his clothes, and he didn't know what to do because he thought something horrible would happen, because now he's put in a predicament. What if this guy doesn't get better? What if he dies here? What's going to happen? Oh my gosh. And Elisha hears the story. He says, he hears that the king is like ripping his clothes. And he finds out what's going on, and he says, "Send the guy to me." And so Naaman, the Syrian general, goes to Elisha's house. And I don't know why, but I don't know why in the story. I guess it makes sense. Elisha isn't there. He just leaves a message through his servant. And the servant tells the king, tells the general, "Go to this Jordan River, bathe in it 7 times, and you'll be cured." Which is kind of nice that the man of God, Elisha, would do this for another dignitary. I mean, it's funny, Israel has done amazing things like that. For like the wife of the Hamas leader who was really, really ill, was treated in our hospital and released. We've done stuff like that with enemies. And like Hadassah Hospital continually takes, most of its patients are of Palestinian Arab descent, not of Jewish descent. We do a lot of trying to help people heal, regardless of where they come from. And so Elisha was, I guess, helped to found this tradition in Judaism that you help even your enemy get better. So the king, the general that got this message, "Go bathe in the river 7 times," he gets all mad. He says, "What? He wants me to bathe in this river. It's not even much of a river. We've got much bigger rivers back in Syria, and they flow more, and the water is pure. What? Why do I have to come all the way over here?" I figured that he would have said an incantation, a special prayer, done some kind of a ritual, asked me to do something really hard, blessed me in some way. But the assistants to the general, I guess his advisors, were with him. And I said, "Listen, General, the king asked you to do something. If Elisha asked you to do something really hard, you would have done it, right? I mean, you want to get healed. This is easy. Just do it. Just see what happens." And it's amazing, because a lot of times we have this huge pride that gets in our way. But Elisha listened, the general Naaman listened to his advisors, and he went in the Jordan River and he bathed 7 times. And when he came out, it says his skin was as pure as a newborn baby's. All of the leprosy had disappeared. All of it. It's just gone. It vanished. Now, yeah, that's a miracle, right? But I think every other step of the way, all of the other things that all of the people did, simple things, what we call common decency. I think common decency is a misnomer. I think that it's pretty uncommon, especially time and time again, like happens in the story. It's uncommon. So Naaman is cured, and he's incredibly grateful, and he takes all this incredible wealth, and he goes to Elisha, and he says, "Here, thank you very much. This is for you." And Elisha says, "No, I won't have it." He said, essentially, God did the healing, not me. And Naaman says, "No, I insist." And Elisha says, "No, I'm not going to take it." And Naaman, the general, is so taken aback by this, so kind of blown away, that he says it's obvious that the God of Israel is the one true God and the only God that I'm going to pray to the rest of my life. He essentially converts to Judaism right then and there. So why is the story told this way? I think it's told this way for us. We're not always going to be able to jump in a river and be cured of illnesses. In fact, even in now the 21st century, one teeny little germ can wreak havoc on the whole world, on so many different people, and there's not much we can do about it, and on countries and economies. My, oh my, the ramifications of this. There's some, anyways, we might not be able to heal everything all the time, but we can act like the Israelite servant, the young lady, and we can wish well, even for people that we might not care for all that much, but we can wish them well. And that really matters. And we can listen to people's well-intentioned advice and take it at face value and say, well, maybe they really do mean well. Maybe they really are being nice, and not try to read into it some kind of hidden ulterior motive. Just maybe they're really being nice. And good things can happen from that. Good things can happen from it. And maybe it's okay to ask for help if we're hurting. And Naaman was hurting, and he asked for help even from an enemy. And it's okay to help out your enemy. It's okay to believe them. It's okay to believe. That's how good things happen. And sometimes our pride gets in the way, and sometimes we're looking for something really hard to do, but the solution is really simple. Maybe we can find the simple thing. You know, in this story, it was a time when things were really hard and people were kind. Nowadays, it's hard times. It's hard. And it'll be hard for a while. But we can be kind. You would think being kind, listening to each other, having faith, you'd think that that's a really easy thing to do. But it can be really difficult. It is so easy to not be kind right now. It's so easy to say, this is their problem, not mine. Look what they did, blame others. But if we're kind, if we listen, if we take people at face value and realize that the people can be genuine and we are genuine as well, then I think miracles can happen. That's what I think is the biggest miracle in the story. That such people we're kind to each other and listen to each other. You know, there's one other fascinating thing about this story. Sickness was really bad, but from a bad thing can come good things. The relations between the two countries were healed. Many lives were spared because of it. We made friends. Out of sickness, we made friends. Maybe an awful lot of good can come out of our situation right now. But we have to remember to do common decency, even if it's uncommon, and it might be. Just be kind. Just be kind. Just assume people mean well. That don't try to read into to undermine their actions. Treat them decent. Even if maybe they haven't treated you decent, try to treat them decent. That's what this story is telling us. I think if we do that, we'll bring an awful lot of healing to this world. And tomorrow morning's story is also a good one. Don't you love the story? I really do. Look up the other Elisha, Elisha stories. Elisha was a disciple of Elijah the prophet. Anyways, we're going to take a moment to count the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat Omer. Those are the days between Passover with the crossing of the Red Sea until 7 weeks later we get the 10 Commandments and Torah on Mount Sinai at the holiday of Shavuot. So we're like counting our days, just like kind of counting the days of the quarantine. It makes every day unique a little bit, and it helps. So today, starting this evening, is the 16th day of the Omer. Hayom Shisha Asar Yamim Shehem Shnei Shavuot V'Yom Shnayim LaOmer. This is the 16th day. That's 2 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. I just want to let you know a few things. You know, some houses of worship have just like shut down and have gone, what do they call it on Broadway? It's gone black. Some have done that. We haven't. We were really ahead of the curve. Thank you, Michael Scott. Thank you, Cantor. Thank you. Actually, I got to say thank you to my wife, too, for helping out with this. When her mom, Edie Nissenblatt, died, she said, I want to set up a fund to live stream. And so we call this Edie Baby Productions, because my mother-in-law sometimes, she was Edith, sometimes she went by Edie Baby. But we were really ahead of the curve on this. And we've got a lot of things going on.